The wind howled across the open plains like some lonely ghost that refused to rest, carrying with it the faint smell of rain and the distant howl of coyotes. But for Caleb Hargrove, the solitary rancher who'd spent the last 7 years working a stretch of land so barren folks said only a fool or a broken-hearted man would try to tame it, the weather was the least of his concerns. He'd learned to live with the storms, the droughts, and the endless work. It was the silence inside the big old ranch house that gnawed at him, the kind of silence that follows a tragedy you can't bury deep enough. His wife, Eliza, had passed in childbirth, taking their first and only child with her, and ever since, Caleb had buried himself in cattle drives, mending fences, and keeping his hands so busy he wouldn't have to think about how empty the house felt at night. But with spring roundup coming, he knew he couldn't do it all himself, not and keep from running the place into the ground. So when a young woman named Clara Mayfield came to town looking for work, offering to cook and keep house in exchange for fair wages and a roof over her head, Caleb said yes without thinking twice. Clara was quiet but steady, with a way of moving through the kitchen that made the place feel lived in again. Biscuits that melted in your mouth, coffee strong enough to put hair on your chest, and a neatness that Eliza herself might have smiled at. Yet, after a week, Caleb noticed something that tugged at the edge of his mind. The way Clara kept her sleeves rolled down no matter how hot the day got. The way she flinched just slightly when a door slammed or when his boots thudded on the porch. The way her eyes sometimes carried that far-off look of someone bracing for something bad. One morning, when she reached across the table to set down a plate of eggs, her cuff slipped back just enough for him to see it. A bruise, ugly and purple, wrapped around her wrist like a shackle. "What happened there?" Caleb asked, his voice low, but Clara froze, pulling her sleeve down in a practiced, almost frightened motion. "Kitchen accident," she muttered, avoiding his eyes. But Caleb had spent a lifetime around ranch hands and roughnecks, and he knew the shape of a grip mark when he saw one. He didn't press her then, but all day the image burned in his mind, and that night, long after the lamps were blown out, he sat on the porch staring into the dark, his jaw tight. The next few days, he started noticing more. A shadow along her collarbone when she bent to hang laundry, the way her right ankle seemed to bother her when she walked, a wince when she lifted the heavy kettle from the stove. Then, late one night, a storm rolled in, bringing with it more than just rain. Over the pounding of the wind, Caleb heard the sound of hoofbeats, hard and urgent, and when he stepped out with his rifle, he saw 3 riders coming fast, their slickers gleaming wet in the lightning's flash. At their head was a man Caleb recognized from town, Virgil Kane, the foreman of the Cross Spur Ranch, known for his mean streak and his quick temper, especially toward anyone he thought beneath him. They pulled up in the yard, and Virgil swung down, calling over the storm, "Got something of mine in there, Hargrove?" "Name's Clara." Caleb's stomach turned cold, but he kept his voice steady. "Ain't nothing in here that belongs to you." Virgil laughed, a harsh sound. "She was working off a debt. Ran off in the night like a thief. I've come to collect her, and if you know what's good for you, you'll hand her over." Lightning cracked, showing the rain dripping from Virgil's sneer, the other 2 men shifting in their saddles, hands too close to their pistols. Caleb's mind was already made up. "She's under my roof now," he said, his voice carrying that kind of finality that comes from a man who's already decided what line he's willing to cross. Virgil took a step forward, rain streaming off his hat brim. "Don't make this hard, Hargrove." Caleb's rifle came up, smooth as breathing, the barrel glinting in the flash of light. "You take one more step," he said, "and it'll be your last." For a heartbeat, no one moved but the storm around them. Then Clara appeared in the doorway, her face pale, eyes wide, and Caleb felt her fear like a physical thing pressing against his back. Virgil tried to bluff, spitting about debts and contracts, but Caleb cut him off. "I don't give a damn what story you've cooked up. A man who puts bruises on a woman's skin forfeits his right to call himself a man, and if you think the law's gonna help you, you're welcome to ride into town and test that." One of Virgil's men muttered something about it not being worth it, but Virgil wasn't the type to back down easy. He glared at Caleb, then at Clara, then swung into the saddle with a promise that this wasn't over. Caleb watched them disappear into the storm, his grip on the rifle never loosening until the last hoofbeat faded. Inside, Clara stood by the fire, her hands trembling. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "He'll come back." Caleb set the rifle down and met her gaze. "Then I'll be ready." Over the next week, word of the standoff spread through the town like wildfire. Some folks warned Caleb to stay out of it, that Virgil Kane had friends in low places, but others started coming by. An old ranch hand who'd once worked under Virgil and still had the scars to show for it, a shopkeeper whose niece had been run off by Kane's threats, and little by little, Caleb realized this wasn't just about Clara anymore. The night Virgil did come back, he brought 5 men, their eyes mean and their guns ready, thinking numbers would be enough to break one man's will. But Caleb wasn't alone this time. Half a dozen townsfolk were waiting in the shadows of the barn, rifles in hand, ready to show Kane that his reign of fear was done. The showdown was over in minutes. A warning shot split the air, followed by a wall of armed neighbors stepping into the open. Outnumbered and outgunned, Virgil cursed them all and rode off for good, his men scattering like spooked cattle. Clara stood beside Caleb the whole time, her chin lifted, and for the first time since she'd arrived, there was something fierce in her eyes, the look of someone who finally believed she was free. In the days that followed, she stayed on at the ranch, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to, because she'd found a place where her worth wasn't measured in servitude or fear. Caleb never asked for thanks, and she never offered pity for the loneliness she'd walked into. They worked side by side, season after season, 2 souls who'd learned that in a land as wild and unforgiving as the West, the truest kind of strength was standing up for someone who couldn't yet stand up for themselves. And if you believe the world needs more stories of courage like this, of justice that rides faster than fear, then hit that subscribe button right now, because out here, every story worth telling is one that can change a life.